if you've got a boy and a girl, it doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah, no, I accept that. We can.
Chair, can I add something, please?
Yes, Colin.
Thank you. I did put my hand up, but maybe you can't see it. Yeah, I mean, I want to throw some stats at you, if that's okay. On our housing register, there are nearly 3,000 households. Of the nearly 9,000 households who need a 2-bedroom property, haven't classified that in 2-bed 3 persons or 2-bed 4 persons, about 3,000, which is quite sizable. Homelessness, in temporary accommodation, 500. And if we're looking at the ordinary waiting list or the housing register, just over 2,000, and council tenants who want to transfer, 300 plus. So we do need 2 bedrooms. I hear what you say, councillor, about some people go into a 2-bedroom property and their family size will increase. They'll need a larger property, but not all cases. We got a massive need for 2-bedroom properties in the borough, and obviously when we develop housing in the borough, which we are doing and we will do more of, we have to have a mix of sizes to manage the current housing register. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Moore.
There's 3 numbers here that all seem to be saying different numbers for the same things in terms of affordable housing. If you include the target from earlier in item 7 that said 100 affordable, if I was reading that right, 100 affordable housing was the aim per year. And then I've got in this section here on this item, in point 7.3 of this one, you've got an aim to have 85 per year, and then another one where the aim is 350 per year. So you've got 3 different numbers, all with different targets for the same thing, which has confused me unless I'm not seeing something correct. Now, obviously, the last one is an aim by the end of the strategy period, but I don't understand why you've now got a target from our previous item earlier on in this meeting from item 7 of 100 and a different, more immediate target in this of 85 for affordable houses.
That's a fair point. I think where we're at is we are looking of a minimum 85 and we're targeting for 100 at the moment, but we want to, in the course of the time of this strategy, to be pushing that up very significantly. And we've got other reports going to committee about expanding our programme, expanding our capital availability so that we can bring more homes forward. At the moment, that isn't built into our financial arrangements, and we need to have, once we go to in the strategy, we need to have set that really driving target to say, okay, we're here, it's not enough, we want to really push it, we want to get to a point where we're looking at 350, and in order to have that embraced in the strategy so that we've got a strategic kind of basis to then say, and in order to achieve that, we then need to increase our programme, because at the moment our programme won't go there, and we need to have that strategic cover. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's about growing from where we are now to where we want to be and beyond, hopefully.
Thank you.
Councillor Wynne.
Yeah, just one comment. That was, Tom, why I was asking the question in the previous item about whether you agreed with the figures, because they didn't tie in with the figures here. So I got to the same conclusion as Councillor Moore.
In-depth housing investment programme to do it. To answer some of Peter's questions, I would love to do everything to Parker Morris standard. Absolutely love it, which was big enough and everything else. But now most developers do 20% below Parker Morris. We do 10% below ourselves. But Parker Morris, a 4-person 2-bedroom, at Parker Morris is a completely different one than what you're getting down at Boxhalls at the moment. We've got the targets you see down there for now are no ones what we know we can do. But what we've got is these ambitions. Like there's 400 houses in the private sector in this report that we want to get the insulation done on and the cladding done on, the external render done on. It was 2 or 3, but through discussions we put it up to 400. Very ambitious. More ambitious than anyone round us. But if you don't put ambition into your housing investment programme, you're not going anywhere. You might as well just stand still. You know, all our properties we want to Band C and get them done up to Band C. I wish we could get the private sector to adopt Band C. Most of their properties are in Band E. So we'd love to get them, and through private sector licensing, we will be able to get them up to Band C, but it may take 5 or 6 years to do it. So it's a long-term programme, a lot of ambition in it. It's a good programme. Some of the numbers, you know, the 400 a year for insulation and all that kind of stuff are pretty high. But unless you give yourself a target to go for, a good target to go for, you might as well just sit down, do an A4. This is what we're going to do. What you're doing now, and just repeating it every year. What this does is increase everything we're doing every year for the next 4 or 5 years. And that's where I think we've got to go. Not going to be easy. We may fail on a couple of them, but it gives us a real target to go for. And we're making it public. This is what we're going for. We're not hiding it away. We're not hiding an easy route. This is an hard route. And we're going out publicly and saying, we might not get it all, but we're going to try and get it all. And that's what the whole report's about.
Thank you. Is it a comment, David, or a question?
Neither. I'm just giving you notice. I'd like to move a resolution
Can I
at a
ask
convenient moment.
Yeah, I've got a question. On page 188, it says access to homes in neighbouring areas. Now, I believe Central Beds have changed what Luton residents can bid for. Am I correct in saying this?
So, yeah, so remember when I was last at Scrutiny, it was around the new allocations policy in central Bedfordshire, and the upshot of which was that we didn't have a lot of confidence that this was going to give a lot of priority for people who we felt were high priority cases from Luton. But we also have ambitions to bring homes forward and develop and acquire homes within and around Luton, and it sort of refers to that as well. That's not to say we aren't still pressing for access to affordable homes on sites that are in those SP1 sites defined in the local plan.
I was thinking of the 3,600 that they're going to be supposedly building sometime fairly soon. Will there be no Luton residents in there unless they're buying their houses?
And yeah, buying some of those is, you know, once we've expanded our capital programme, that's an option that we can take forward, and we're already having some conversations about that possibility.
Wynne, did you have a comment?
Yes, two things. I think probably the best thing that I think in the whole report, and I think something that we should push very strongly if we can, Tom, is the phrase that you used of a Luton living rent. And I think that's a very, very strong positive message to put out to reinforce this strategy, and I think will go down extremely well in the town. Yeah, but that phrase itself, I think, is probably the highlight of the whole report to me. The bit that worried me was that there was a statement which says we can look forward to having more tall, higher-rise buildings in our townscape, and that worried me quite a lot. The town centre plan is suggesting that we have some lower level building areas and residential areas, but this report is saying we can look forward to having more high-rise ones.
I asked you not concentrate on the town centre. I mean, one of the things I had a discussion with some officers this morning about a very old-fashioned phase is part 2 in our sheltered accommodation, moving on from just normal sheltered up. One of our most successful shelter blocks is 14 stories, Ackworth Court on Ockwell Ring. So why can't we think in different ways? If we can put 4 or 5 communal rooms into a block that size, put enough wardens in there, it says on, I think it's section 50, around 50 in the report, that we'll completely relook at the warden service to see what alterations need to be done. We're not making any promises, but we're going to look at it. But there's no reason why we can't go upwards with some of our accommodation. Put another floor on some of the shelter blocks. Do what they do out in Germany. They don't just finish at 2 and not move up. As long as the lifts are there, the accommodation's right. We're in desperate need of part 2 and our part 3 accommodation. That's the old-fashioned term. The officers have got a brand new term for it all now. But the old-fashioned term is part 2 and half accommodation. Why don't we do it? But the thing, because one of the big problems housing's got now is people are living in our shelter blocks an awful lot longer. They used to go in when they were 57, 58, 60, and, you know, passed on and moved on by the time in the early 70s. We've got people what have lived in the same shelter block now for 20 odd years. So we've got to plan. Population's getting older. We've got to plan to be able to take care of that older population. And we've got to plan instead of living in, you know, someone goes in the shelter block, stays there, lives 12, 13, 14 years. 20, 25 years is not going to be unusual anymore in a shelter block. So we need to be planning for that now. But one of the problems is people who are in shelter blocks what need extra care. So we've got to plan to either change some of our shelter blocks to extra care blocks or build some more extra care blocks in the town somewhere to take care of the people with special mobility needs and everything else. But there's no reason if you've got the right lifts and everything else, you can't go up on top of the blocks we've got now. None at all. I don't think there is.
Thank you, Chair.
No more questions or comments? Councillor Franks.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. A three-pronged proposal for you. First, that Overview and Scrutiny Board fully supports the adoption of this comprehensive housing strategy. 2, notes that it is ambitious and calls for a monitoring report in approximately 12 months' time. And 3, recommends executive to examine the scheme introduced in Oxford with a view to limiting the number of houses in multiple occupation in a street or neighbourhood.
Does everybody agree to that?
I'm surprised that that recommendation.
Just a quick clarification. Very happy on the whole. When you're talking about a monitoring report in 12 months, are you talking about 12 months from now or 12 months from the adoption of the strategy?
Well, I guess we ought to be looking at 12 months from when the document's adopted.
Okay, because I'm just thinking that's probably going to be September time, so we'll be 6 months in already. Do you see what I mean? So, but yeah, that's fine.
Thank you for the report. But moving on to item 13, Employment and Skills Strategy Report.
Good evening, everyone. So we're bringing this strategy here for comment ahead of it going to executive next Monday. I'm sure that you've all read the strategy and implementation plan, and since submission of this paperwork, we've had a really good discussion at policy group where we discussed ward deprivation, and we will ensure that nobody is left behind. And as such, we just wanted to highlight that some of the activities will be borough-wide. So, for example, through the colleges, adult learning, etc. And it will be critical that we ensure local communities are aware and able to access the local offer. Some of the activities will be very much based in the heart of the communities, particularly our most deprived areas. We'll continue to co-design solutions with the community, anchoring the strategy. So Jodie and I are now happy to answer any questions or take away any comments you may have. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes. Yes, here we go again. They're fairly simple. I'm just hard to know where to start. I think I'd like to have seen more evidence of where the jobs are coming from, the nature of the jobs that are being generated, and therefore I could tie in better between the skills, training, the education needs and so on. So I somehow seem to be missing the data to be able to pull it all together. For example, it's talking about employment, and it references specifically, if I remember right, Power Court Station, the Hack District. What's the station got to do with it? And what sort of employment are you thinking is going to come from Power Court? And what are the skills mix that's required? I understand where you're trying to go, and particularly the deprived areas of the town, there's clearly a need to balance the right skills and training in order to try and help people out of that deprivation. I understand all of that, but I somehow don't seem to be able to pull together all the data that suggests it. And if I were to be running an adult training centre or a further education college at the moment, and I was reading this report, I wouldn't really see what I was supposed to be training people for.
Thank you. Really useful comments there. There was huge evidence base that was done as an activity at the start of this piece of work. And in the implementation plan, there are 94 different actions within there, and you will note that part of those are actually assigned to employers. So they need to inform us of what those skills needs are moving forwards. Because what happens now is that businesses will say, we've got skill shortages. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that they identify what those are and that we put in the right skills pathways. So if, for example, we don't have enough engineers at level 5, we need to make sure that the colleges and the university are putting those courses in. So it's about ensuring that as those jobs start to become available, we've got the right skills pathway so that local people are able to then upskill and apply for those posts. So as part of being that collaborative approach, as part of the Employment and Skills Partnership Board, we do have the university and the FE colleges and employers all sitting on that board so that we can make sure that those conversations happen. And also in light of things changing in terms of green skills. So we know that the government talk about green skills a huge amount and all the jobs that it's going to create. Yes, there will be an element of new jobs that come online as a part of that, but actually it will also be about modifying some of those jobs that are already there. So talking about gas boiler fitters, etc. So it's about making sure that it is a collaborative approach. If we know and we are able to support those businesses to develop, then we can work with the colleges to make sure that that pathway is there for people.
Can I just also add the recent employment fair that we had about 800 jobs currently which were vacant, and that ranged from hospitality, including architects, as well as engineers from the airport. So we had engaged all the employees in the town, and they're clearly telling us that they need people. We just need to make sure that our people are skilled enough and have got the necessary skills to meet those jobs. So demand is there. And if we look at the next 5 live projects that we've got, and if you look at even if you look at the planning, working with the planning department and the kind of projects which are already existing or will be delivered, means that there will be demand as soon as these projects get going again. We were held back due to COVID, but we've got a very strong recovery plan in place, and we're very confident that those jobs will start again. But there is, even currently today, there is demand, and we just want to make sure people across all age range have got the necessary training and skills that they need to get those local jobs.
I was going to respond to Councillor Wynn's point around the Hat District Station and Power Court in terms of jobs. Well, they will be, significant construction jobs in those areas, in terms of the amount of dwellings and development, as Councillor Aslam said, in those areas, which will bring labour in to kind of build those new areas of development. So I think, it's just worth kind of checking in, as Aslam said, in relation to kind of what's coming through the pipeline for planning, which is significant, and then that being built out.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Franks.
Yeah, just a quick comment really on the latest little dialogue that's been going on here. That there is undoubtedly a problem in Luton at the moment. Many of the higher skilled, higher salaried jobs that Luton employers are offering are actually taken by people who live outside Luton. And we saw that in the report on the first item on the agenda this evening, where we need to recognise that one of the problems we need to deal with is the fact that the salaries of people who live in Luton are, on average, lower than the salaries of people who are employed in Luton, precisely for this reason. So, yes, it is important that we are equipping our young people to have the skills to apply for these higher skilled and higher salaried jobs. It's essential.
Just quickly to acknowledge, you're absolutely right, and that's the whole point of this strategy, is connecting all the dots and making sure all the stakeholders are on board, including the employers, and making that absolute commitment that when those jobs do arise, we do have the right skilled people and the commitment from the employers to employ locally. And that's the whole point, and including the university and colleges to offer those right courses of quality. And that's the whole point and focus of this strategy.
Councillor Mallett.
Thank you, Chair. And I think there's the right strategy for Luton in place at the moment. We have more young people living in Luton than elderly people, and giving our youth and future generation the choice, aspiration, and baseline skills is more important than anything else at the moment. So I'm quite happy with this strategy. So thank you very much. Thank you.
I've got a question. It's tracking the change and monitoring impact. Now, I know that you're going to be reporting to ESPB, but will it be reported anywhere else, like come back to OSB? You're going to do a yearly report, I believe.
Yes, it will be. So as part of the ESPB, it will then go to the Inclusive Economy Board, but we will look to come back to OSB and to Executive on an annual basis.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any more questions or comments? Thank you very much for a very interesting report. So look forward to seeing you in a year's time. The recommendations is to approve the employment and skills strategy. Oh, I've got an executive report.
Just to note the comments.
That's what it says.
Yes, that goes up in this.
Oh, sorry. The recommendation is the Overview and Scrutiny Board is invited to consider the attached executive report and make any comments in particular on the proposed new 5-year employment and skills strategy 2022 to 2027 attached at Appendix 2 and the proposed implantation plan that underpins the strategy priorities laid out in the strategy at Appendix 3. Does the committee agree? That was a mouthful. Thank you. Thank you very much for your report. Next one is Luton Horizon. I believe it's over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a couple of words of explanation. I am here representing the Chief Executive. He would have been addressing you this evening, but he's in Liverpool. He asked me to come here tonight because I think he thinks that I'm probably the best person to answer any questions that you might have on this report, but obviously it is his report to Executive. The covering report refers to the business plan going to Executive on the 7th of March. That has now changed. It will be going to the Executive on the 4th of April, and that gives us the opportunity to have meaningful engagement with the Finance Review Group. So the business plan is on the agenda for that meeting on Thursday, which will enable the Finance Review Group to delve relatively deeply into the financial information contained in the business plan. Although I would mention that we also have the opportunity to make sure that that financial information is as up to date as possible. And as I referred to earlier, we are currently looking at the latest data on passenger forecasts in order to see what impact that has on the projections that we were making back when the stabilisation plan was approved and when we entered into the settlement agreement in autumn of last year. That's the clarification, Chair. I would just say that the report is in two parts for a good reason. It's often been alleged that too much of the information relating to the airport is dealt with in private, and therefore that's why we very much wanted to make as much of the business plan as possible available to the public. But of course there is exempt information in that, which is why there is a separate report in the private part of the agenda.
Are there any questions? Yes, David.
Yeah, a couple of points. First of all, this is a major reorganisation of the way the airport company is organised, reorganising the board of directors, 7 new posts, 5 consultants. It's big, big stuff. I'm obviously quite happy for it to go to Finance Review Group, and I hope they manage to digest the financial implications. More to the point, I'm a bit disappointed that a reorganisation on this scale is going forward without being considered by the new shareholders group that the council has just recently set up. I would have thought this was a classic case where the shareholders group ought to be looking at it in some detail. So quite apart from Finance Review Group, could Mark please confirm that it will go to the shareholders group, which is meeting on the 17th of March, or explain why it isn't? And the second point I want to make is I'm looking at the private report, which I'm not proposing to discuss in detail. I really do not feel inclined to read through the 100-odd pages of the same report twice. So I give notice that when you get to the private bit, I'm going to be asking for someone to point out which bits in the private bit are missing from the public bit. Thank you.
David, I've also already mentioned that to Mark, and I believe he's organised that. So you should get that information when we go to private.
Yes, I can confirm that Councillor Franks will certainly get that information, Chair, as best as I'm able to provide it. On his first point, much of what is, if not all of what is in the business plan, has already been discussed through the process of stabilisation. So we know that their consideration was given to reorganising the board of directors. We know that there have been discussions about how the company should organise itself in the future, and those discussions are reflected in the business plan. But absolutely, the timing is not perfect. I wish that we could have had a meeting of the shareholders group a month ago. That would have been ideal. But this business plan most certainly will be considered by the Luton shareholder group, and it is the Luton shareholder group that will be holding the company to account for working to this plan. So they will have a very clear and influential voice in what the company or how well the company adheres to its business plan.
My understanding of the whole purpose of the shareholder group was to be able to influence the way in which the executive as shareholder votes for various issues affecting the way the council's subsidiary companies are run. I mean, what we're being told now is that the shareholder group will have an opportunity to monitor whether the plan is being followed, but is not being given an opportunity to influence what the plan contains. I don't see, as a member of the shareholder group, I'm forced to ask myself, why do I bother? What is the point of the shareholder group if a major, huge reconstruction of the biggest asset the council owns is being approved and pushed forward without the shareholder group getting an input? Doesn't make sense to me at all. And given that the shareholder group is meeting on the 17th of March, I would have thought they could have had an opportunity to do that, especially since this is not now going to executive until April.
Yes, Chair, they will have an opportunity to do that. The business plan will go before them, but the arrangements that are presently in place in terms of bringing it to this meeting and to the OSB were made some time ago, and it was unclear when the Luton shareholder group would be formed and when it would first meet. As you know, it was formed back in January as a result of a resolution of the executive, but unfortunately it has not been able to meet until the 17th of March. And the timing is unfortunate, but I can assure Councillor Franks that the Luton shareholder group will have a say in the content of this business plan year on year going forward.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mark, for the first part. I just want to do the overview and scrutiny board draft work programme. I'd like to add equality, diversity and inclusion strategy, which is going to the 25th of April's exec onto the 11th of April's meeting. Anybody want to add anything else onto the work programme? Do I have to read this bit out now to go into private? David, that,
Yes, if we're done with it.
yeah, that, nobody wants anything else to add on to it. Right. Local Government Act 1972.